Mafia boss sees his ex-wife, covered in bruises. What he did next shook the whole city. She was standing in the rain, face swollen, arms bruised, whispering my name like a ghost from a life I'd buried. When I pulled her close, she flinched. That's when I saw it, the marks. Someone had turned my ex-wife into a canvas of pain. And when she said his name, I realized I wasn't just going to find him. I was going to make the whole city remember who I am. The headlights caught her before he did. Edward Wallace didn't believe in divine intervention. At 11:43 p.m., he stepped out of his black Mercedes onto rain-slicked asphalt outside the Lakeview Tower, his mind churning through logistics for tomorrow's waterfront deal. The city's ambient noise was background static he'd learned to ignore years ago. But then, his driver cut the engine, and in the sudden silence, he heard it. Breathing. Shallow, ragged, the kind that came with pain. A woman stood between streetlights, her pale dress clinging to her like a second skin, darkened by rain. She wrapped her arms around her torso, not for warmth, but to hide something. Amber. The name left his mouth before he could stop it. 3 years of silence, and there she was, his ex-wife, standing in the rain like a ghost made flesh. She turned toward his voice, and the headlights fully illuminated her face. Edward Wallace had built an empire on maintaining composure. He'd negotiated with men who kept loaded guns on the table. But the sight of Amber's face, mascara streaked, lips split, that hollow look in her eyes, drove the air from his lungs. Edward. Her voice was barely audible. I didn't know where else. She swayed, and he moved. 3 strides closed the distance, and he caught her before she could fall. His hands found her arms to steady her, and she flinched at his touch. That's when he felt them. Through the soaked fabric, his fingers encountered swollen flesh, the unmistakable texture of bruised skin. He loosened his grip immediately. Her bare arms were a canvas of violence, deep purple marks that looked fresh, yellowing patches that were days old, darker bruises around her collarbone that disappeared beneath her neckline. Someone had hurt her. Badly. Recently. Repeatedly. Who did this to you? His voice came out rougher than intended. Amber pulled away, wrapping her arms back around herself. Please, Edward. Just go. Amber. I'm fine. I just need to get home. I shouldn't have come here. She tried to move past him, but her legs weren't cooperating. Edward caught her again, more carefully, and felt her entire body trembling. You're not fine, and you're not going anywhere until you tell me what happened. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. She looked up at him, and he saw something break behind her eyes. Some wall she'd been holding up finally crumbling. You can't fix this. Not this time. Edward had heard those words before, years ago, when she'd packed her bags and walked out of his life. When she'd told him she couldn't live in his world anymore, couldn't watch him sink deeper into the darkness. But this was different. Get in the car, he said quietly. Edward, get in the car. Something in his tone made her comply. He guided her into the back seat, then slid in beside her, nodding to his driver. Dr. Chen's clinic. Now. As the Mercedes pulled away, Edward removed his suit jacket and draped it around Amber's shoulders. In the passing streetlights, he could see more bruises emerging, a roadmap of violence written on her skin. Amber, I need you to tell me who did this. She shook her head. He'll know. He always knows. Who will know? My husband. The word hit Edward like a physical blow. Husband. She'd remarried, moved on, built a new life, and someone in that new life had decided she was something they could break. Your husband did this to you. She nodded, barely. Patrick Hale. Edward pulled out his phone, typing a quick message to Lucas Santoro. Need everything on Patrick Hale. Wife is Amber Robinson. Urgent. The response came within seconds. On it. When did this start? He asked. Does it matter? You can't do anything, Edward. He's connected. Police, City Hall, judges. I tried to report him once. The detective lost my statement. My medical records disappeared. The system protects him. Edward felt something cold and familiar settle in his chest. That ice-water clarity that came before he made decisions other people would regret. Then I'll handle it outside the system. No. She grabbed his arm, her eyes sharp with fear. That's exactly what he wants. He told me if I ever tried to leave, if I ever went to someone like you, he'd make sure I disappeared. And he can, Edward. He has the whole city behind him. Edward looked at the purple fingerprints around her wrist where someone had grabbed her, held her down, hurt her. Then I'll remind the city who really runs it, he said quietly. The Mercedes pulled up to a discreet brownstone. Dr. Sarah Chen had been cleaning up Edward's messes for 15 years. She asked no questions and kept no records. At the door, Amber paused, looking up at him. Why are you doing this? I left you. I broke your heart and walked away. Edward brushed wet hair from her bruised face. You once told me you left because you couldn't watch me become a monster, so I'm going to make sure I don't become one. But I'm also going to make sure the man who hurt you never touches anyone again. How? By doing what I do best. Finding the truth, following the money, and making powerful people afraid. Amber woke to sunlight filtering through expensive curtains. For one blissful moment, she forgot everything. Then she moved, and her ribs screamed in protest. She was in Edward's penthouse. The room was all clean lines and muted colors. Minimalist, expensive, masculine. Someone had changed her into an oversized t-shirt that smelled like cedar and darker memories. Edward's shirt. The bruises looked worse in daylight. Purple and black and yellow-green covered her arms like abstract art. A soft knock. Amber? You awake? Yes. Edward entered carrying a tray, coffee, toast, fruit arranged like hotel room service. He'd changed into dark jeans and a black Henley that made him look younger, less dangerous. Dr. Chen said you should eat. Nothing heavy. How long was I asleep? 14 hours. It's almost noon. Patrick doesn't know where you are. This building has security most government facilities would envy. He finally met her eyes. No one gets up here without my permission. I can't stay here, Edward. Yes, you can. She tried to stand, but her legs weren't cooperating. Edward caught her before she could fall. You have 3 cracked ribs, a wrist that's still healing from an old fracture, and enough bruising that Dr. Chen said you're lucky you don't have internal bleeding. So yes, you will stay here. He'll come looking for me. Let him. That darkness in his voice reminded her exactly why she'd left 3 years ago. This was the man who'd built an empire in Chicago's shadows, the man who made powerful people afraid. Edward, listen to me. She grabbed his arm. You can't fix this. Patrick isn't like the people you deal with. He's legitimate, respected. He has the police, the courts, half of City Hall in his pocket. If you go after him, you'll lose. I've never lost a fight that mattered. Because you've never fought someone like him before. Edward pulled up a chair, sitting close. Tell me about him. Tell me how this happened. She looked away. I met him at a fundraiser, about 2 years ago. He was charming, successful, safe. She laughed bitterly. God, I thought he was safe. No ties to organized crime, no violence, no danger. Just a normal man with a normal life. When did it start? 6 months after we got married. Small things at first. He'd grab my arm too hard when he was angry. Push me during arguments. Then one night She stopped. It doesn't matter when it started. It just did. And you tried to report him. How did you? She looked at him sharply. You already investigated him. The moment you told me his name, I had my people pull everything. Police reports, medical records, financial documents. Edward's expression was stone. I know you filed a domestic violence complaint 6 months ago. I know Detective Marcus Warren closed the case within 48 hours. I know your medical records from the ER were sealed by court order. This was why she'd left him. This ability to uncover everything, to pull strings she didn't even know existed. Then you know there's nothing you can do. The system protects him. Because he paid them to make it disappear. It doesn't matter why. It just means he's untouchable. Edward stood, walking to the windows overlooking the city. You told me last night that your husband said you were having accidents. Do you remember that? Yes. Do you believe that? No. But it doesn't matter what I believe. No one else will believe me. I believe you. 3 words. Simple. Absolute. And somehow they cracked something open inside her chest that she'd been holding closed for months. Edward, please don't do this. Please don't start a war for me. He turned to face her. 3 years ago, you left because you were afraid I was using violence for power. You were right to be afraid. He knelt beside the bed so they were eye level. But this isn't about power, Amber. This is about making sure a man who beats his wife faces consequences. That's not violence for profit. That's justice. There's no justice in this city, not for people like me. Then I'll create it. A sharp knock interrupted them. Lucas Santoro entered. We need to talk, now. Edward looked at Amber. Will you be all right for a few minutes? She nodded, not trusting her voice. In his study, Lucas pulled out his phone. Patrick Hale, 39 years old, owner of Hale Development Group, net worth approximately $40 million, but that's just what's visible. Boss, he's dirty, money laundering through shell companies, fake construction projects. We're talking millions. Whose money? Still digging, but probably organized crime. Could be the Castellanos out of New York. Could be the Russian syndicate. Lucas swiped to another screen. And he's been making major political donations. Mayor Donovan, Police Commissioner Davis, 3 city council members, and the DA's office. Edward moved to his desk, pulling up multiple monitors. Show me the political connections. Lucas displayed a digital web, names connected by lines representing money and favors. Patrick Hale sat at the center like a spider. He's the middleman. Dirty money comes in through his development company, gets cleaned, then flows out as campaign donations. In return, they protect him. And the other women? 3 different women have filed complaints against Hale. All 3 cases were buried. Jessica Torres, case disappeared, she left the state. Christine Park, restraining order denied, then her apartment was vandalized. And Amber. What about the others? Already reaching out with offers of protection. After Lucas left, Edward sat alone in his study. On one screen, security footage showed Amber staring at her bruised arms. On another, financial records scrolled past, showing the web of corruption. He pulled up a secure line. Need a meeting. All division heads. Tonight. Priority Alpha. This was his world. The one Amber had run from. And now he was diving back into it, because someone had hurt her. Someone had made a mistake. His phone buzzed. Lucas. Found Christine Park. She's willing to talk. And boss? She has recordings. Edward typed back. Give her whatever she needs. He stood, walking to the windows. Somewhere down there, Patrick Hale was making calls, pulling strings, activating his network. He had no idea what was coming. Edward sent a final message. I want him to feel what Amber's been feeling. Fear. Uncertainty. The knowledge that nowhere is safe. The conference room had been designed for war. Floor-to-ceiling screens lined one wall. A long obsidian table dominated the center. The windows overlooked the city like a general surveying a battlefield. Edward stood at the head of the table, watching his team file in. Lucas entered first, followed by 3 others. Carefully chosen, fiercely loyal, experts in their fields. Lock it down, Edward said. Lucas engaged security protocols. The windows polarized. A soft hum indicated anti-surveillance systems had activated. Status, Edward said simply. Marcus Chen, his cybersecurity specialist, spoke first. I've penetrated Hale Development Group's financial systems. He's running money through at least 12 shell companies. Classic laundering operation. How much? Conservatively? 8 to 10 million annually. The money's coming from 3 sources. The Castellano family, 40%. The Volkov syndicate, 30%. The rest is from domestic sources. Corrupt union officials, drug trafficking, embezzled funds. So Hale's a freelance launderer. Exactly, and he's good at it. Sofia Rodriguez opened a thick folder. Former FBI she'd left after realizing justice and law weren't always the same thing. I've documented 19 incidents of domestic violence complaints against Patrick Hale over 8 years. Most never made it past the initial report. 19, Edward repeated. How many women? 7 that I can confirm. Jessica Torres, Christine Park, Melissa Grant, Rachel Morrison. She read through the list. And 3 others whose names were redacted. The storage unit in Bridgeport. Yes, we found photographs, medical records, all documenting his crimes. He's been keeping trophies. There's also evidence he's been stalking some of these women years after they left. Edward's hands clenched. He's been hunting them. More like keeping tabs, making sure they stay silent. Sophia pulled out more documents. Of the 7 women, 3 have left the state. 2 changed their identities. 1 filed for bankruptcy after her business mysteriously lost all its clients. And 1, she paused. Rachel Morrison, officially ruled a suicide 2 years ago, but the circumstances were suspicious. The room fell silent. We can't prove Hale killed her, but the timeline is damning. She reported him for assault. Case was dismissed. 3 weeks later, she's found dead from an apparent overdose. Except Rachel Morrison had no history of drug use. Edward turned to the darkened windows. What about his political connections? Extensive, Lucas answered. Mayor Donovan received $300,000 in campaign donations from Hale. Police Commissioner Davis has been on Hale's payroll as a security consultant since 2019, $200,000 annually. 3 city council members, 2 state representatives, and District Attorney Morrison. Morrison? As in Rachel Morrison? Her father. Lucas's expression was grim. Rachel Morrison was the DA's daughter. She reported Patrick Hale for assault. Her case was buried. 3 weeks later, she's dead. And her father did nothing. Because Hale owns him. Because Hale owns all of them. Lucas pulled up financial records showing a web of transactions. Every single person who should have protected these women has taken money from Hale. Tony Vega, Edward's head of security, spoke. I've been running surveillance on Hale since yesterday. He's been making calls. To his lawyer, to Commissioner Davis, to a private security firm called Sentinel Group. He hired them this morning, full protection detail, says he's been receiving threats. He knows Amber's gone, and he knows she came to you. He's circling the wagons. Edward placed both hands flat on the table. I want everything. Every financial transaction, every phone call, every meeting. Marcus, I want his communications. Emails, texts, phone records. Already working on it. Should have access within 24 hours. Sophia, I want witness statements from the other women. Offer them protection, money, new identities, whatever they need. Torres and Park are willing. Grant is considering it. Tony, maintain surveillance on Hale, but keep your distance. They won't spot us. Edward straightened. I want to be clear about something. What we're doing tonight crosses lines. We obtained this evidence through methods that aren't strictly legal. If this backfires, we could all face consequences. We know the risks, Lucas said quietly. But if it works, we'll have exposed corruption that goes to the highest levels. We'll have given voice to 7 women who were silenced. He looked around the room. This is for Amber, for Rachel Morrison, for everyone who's been failed by a broken system. What's the end game? Marcus asked. Are we taking this to the authorities? We're taking it to the public. The authorities are compromised, so we go around them. We leak everything to the press. Multiple outlets simultaneously so it can't be suppressed. That's risky, Sophia warned. Going public means exposing ourselves. Let them dig. I'm not hiding anymore. Edward met each of their eyes. I spent years building this organization in the shadows, but what's the point of all this power if we can't use it to stop men like Patrick Hale? Lucas spoke carefully. Boss, I need to say something. This is about Amber, the woman you loved, the woman you still love. I need to know you're thinking clearly. You're right. This is about Amber. She's the reason I'm doing this now. He paused. But that doesn't make it wrong. If I won't fight for her, then what's the point of any of this? There's a difference between protecting her and starting a war with the entire establishment. Is there? Because from where I'm standing, the establishment declared war on people like Amber a long time ago. We're just finally fighting back. The door opened. Amber stood in the hallway, wrapped in one of his robes. We're done here, Edward said. Keep me updated. Reports every 6 hours. His team filed out. Amber entered, her eyes taking in the screens, the files, the evidence spread across the table. Edward, this is insane. You can't take on the entire city for me. I'm not taking on the city. I'm taking on the people who've corrupted it. That's the same thing. Her voice rose, then cracked. She pressed a hand to her ribs. You're risking everything for what? Revenge? For justice. There's no justice for people like me. He moved closer. 3 years ago, you asked me to choose between you and this life. I couldn't. I failed you. He took her bruised hand gently. But now I'm walking back into it. For you, because the legitimate world you tried to escape to failed you worse than I ever did. Tears slid down her cheeks. I'm not worth a war. Yes, you are. And it's not just you, Amber. It's all of them. 7 women who deserved justice and got silence instead. She studied his face. If you do this, I want to help. I'm tired of being afraid. Edward nodded. All right, but we do this my way, carefully. They spent the next hour going through documents, Amber providing context only someone who'd lived through it could offer. Edward watched her transform, from frightened victim to survivor preparing to fight back. His phone buzzed. Sophia. Christine Park just arrived. She's ready to talk. And boss? She has recordings. Edward showed the message to Amber. Recordings? She breathed. Actual proof? Actual proof. The case just got stronger. She rested her head against his shoulder. For the first time since she'd appeared in the rain, Edward saw hope in her eyes. Patrick Hale's perfect world was about to end. The coffee shop on West Randolph was anonymous and loud, perfect for journalists who valued privacy. Lucas Santoro sat in a corner booth, watching the door, his second espresso growing cold. Nora Vance walked in at 2:17 p.m. Tall, early 40s, red hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her eyes swept the room before landing on Lucas. He raised his cup slightly. She crossed to his booth. Mr. Santoro. She slid in without offering her hand. Your message said you had a story. I'm listening. No pleasantries? I'm a crime reporter for the Tribune, not a society columnist. If you wanted pleasantries, you should have called someone else. She pulled out a digital recorder. Do you mind? Actually, I do. Lucas pushed it back. This conversation is background only. No recordings, no attributions. I point you in the right direction. You do the digging yourself. She studied him, then pocketed the recorder. Fair enough. What's the story? Patrick Hale. Her shoulders tensed slightly. The real estate developer? What about him? You know what about him. You've been investigating him for months. Ever since Rachel Morrison died. Now he had her attention. How do you know about that? Because I know things. It's my job. Lucas pulled out his phone, showing her a photo, documents from the storage unit. Hale's been systematically abusing women for years, 7 that we can confirm, and every time someone tried to report him, the evidence disappeared. Her eyes widened. Where did you get this? Doesn't matter. What matters is that it's real. Documentation of his crimes, medical records, police reports, photographs, all kept in a storage unit like trophies. Jesus. She looked up. Why are you bringing this to me? Because you already suspect. You've been asking questions about Rachel Morrison, trying to figure out why the DA's daughter died under suspicious circumstances and no one investigated. Who do you work for, Mr. Santoro? Someone who wants to see justice done. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. You want the story or not? She was quiet, weighing options. I want it, but I need more than a photo. I need sources, witnesses, hard evidence. You'll have it, but first, I need to know something. Lucas leaned forward. What do you know about Hale's political connections? The coffee shop on West Randolph was anonymous and loud, perfect for journalists who valued privacy. Lucas Santoro sat in a corner booth, watching the door, his second espresso growing cold. Nora Vance walked in at 2:17 p.m., tall, early 40s, red hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her eyes swept the room before landing on Lucas. He raised his cup slightly. She crossed to his booth. Mr. Santoro. She slid in without offering her hand. Your message said you had a story. I'm listening. No pleasantries? I'm a crime reporter for the Tribune, not a society columnist. If you wanted pleasantries, you should have called someone else. She pulled out a digital recorder. Do you mind? Actually, I do. Lucas pushed it back. This conversation is background only. No recordings, no attributions. I point you in the right direction. You do the digging yourself. She studied him, then pocketed the recorder. Fair enough. What's the story? Patrick Hale. Her shoulders tensed slightly. The real estate developer? What about him? You know what about him. You've been investigating him for months, ever since Rachel Morrison died. Now he had her attention. How do you know about that? Because I know things. It's my job. Lucas pulled out his phone, showing her a photo. Documents from the storage unit. Hale's been systematically abusing women for years. 7 that we can confirm. And every time someone tried to report him, the evidence disappeared. Her eyes widened. Where did you get this? Doesn't matter. What matters is that it's real. Documentation of his crimes, medical records, police reports, photographs, all kept in a storage unit like trophies. Jesus. She looked up. Why are you bringing this to me? Because you already suspect. You've been asking questions about Rachel Morrison, trying to figure out why the DA's daughter died under suspicious circumstances and no one investigated. Who do you work for, Mr. Santoro? Someone who wants to see justice done. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. You want the story or not? She was quiet, weighing options. I want it, but I need more than a photo. I need sources, witnesses, hard evidence. You'll have it. But first, I need to know something. Lucas leaned forward. What do you know about Hale's political connections? What everyone knows. He's a major donor. Well-connected, well-liked, considered a pillar of the community. Her voice hardened. He's also protected. Every time I've tried to get someone on record, they've clammed up. Because he owns them. The politicians, the police, the prosecutors, they're all on his payroll. Lucas pulled out a flash drive. This contains transaction records showing payments from Hale's shell companies to various political campaigns and officials. It's a starting point. She stared at the flash drive. If this is what you say it is, this could bring down half the city's leadership. That's the idea. Why now? If you've had this information, let's just say someone we care about got caught in Hale's crosshairs. That made it personal. I don't know you well enough to trust you. Then trust your instincts as a journalist. You've been chasing this story for months because you knew something was wrong. Now I'm handing you the evidence to prove it. Lucas stood. The question is whether you're brave enough to run with it. She looked up, expression hardening. I've been covering crime in this city for 15 years. I've had my tires slashed, my apartment broken into, and my sources threatened. Don't question my courage, Mr. Santoro. Good. Then we'll be in touch. He started to leave, then paused. One more thing. Rachel Morrison. You asked why the DA's daughter died and no one investigated. It's because her father took money from Patrick Hale. When his daughter reported Hale for assault, he had a choice: protect his child or protect his career. He chose wrong. Her face went pale. You're saying the DA knew? I'm saying the system that's supposed to protect people failed Rachel Morrison. It failed all of Hale's victims, and it's still failing them. Lucas met her eyes. Your story could change that, if you have the guts to write it. He left before she could respond. Back at the penthouse, Edward found Amber in the kitchen with Mrs. Delgado, his housekeeper. Both looked up as he entered. Amber's eyes were red-rimmed. Everything all right? He asked. Fine, just talking. Amber stared at her coffee cup. She was telling me about her daughter, how she left an abusive husband 15 years ago, how the police didn't believe her at first. Mrs. Delgado's daughter went through that? She did. She's fine now, remarried, has kids. But it took years. Amber looked up. Mrs. Delgado said the hardest part was realizing the system wasn't designed to help people like her, that police and lawyers and judges all had their own agendas. Edward felt that familiar anger stirring. What else did she say? I told her about Patrick, about trying to report him, about watching evidence disappear. Amber's voice cracked. She wasn't surprised. She said it's what happens when the abuser has power, money, connections. She said the system doesn't protect people, it protects itself. She's right. The system failed you. That's why we're doing this outside the system. Mrs. Delgado said something else. Amber met his eyes. She said her daughter only escaped because someone believed her. One person. A social worker who saw the bruises and didn't accept the excuses. You have more than one person now. You have me, Lucas, my entire organization. I know, it's just... She pulled her hand back, wrapping both arms around herself. I spent so long being invisible, being dismissed. It became easier to just stop trying. You're not alone anymore. No. She looked at him, something fierce in her eyes now. I'm not. And Patrick doesn't know what's coming for him. That evening, Edward stood in his surveillance room. Wall-to-wall monitors showed feeds from across the city. Tony Vega pointed to various screens. We've got eyes on Hale's penthouse, his office, his favorite restaurants. 3-man surveillance team rotating in 12-hour shifts. Good. What's his routine? Predictable. Office by 8 a.m., meetings until lunch. Afternoons in the office or meeting with city officials. Home by 7 p.m., unless he's attending a gala. Tony pulled up a schedule. He's got something tonight. Annual charity dinner at the Palmer House. Black tie. Half the city's elite will be there. Including Mayor Donovan, Commissioner Davis, 3 city council members, District Attorney Morrison, and about 200 other wealthy donors. Edward studied the guest list. Can we get cameras inside? Already done. We've got a man on the catering staff. Wireless cameras hidden in the floral arrangements. Audio pickups in the VIP lounge. Hale will have his security team. Sentinel Group. 6 operatives, all former military. But they're watching for physical threats, not surveillance. Tony grinned. They'll never see us. I want everything recorded. Every conversation when Hale thinks he's safe among friends. They watched for an hour as Hale prepared for the gala. Through hidden cameras, they tracked his movements, always watching, always waiting. At 7:30 p.m., Hale emerged in a tuxedo, his security team flanking him. He looked every inch the successful businessman. Confident, powerful, untouchable. But Edward could see the cracks. The way his eyes scanned the parking garage, the tension in his shoulders. "He's feeling it," Edward murmured. "The pressure. Good. Now let's see how he handles it in public." Edward found her on the terrace. It was past midnight, the city spread below like trapped stars. Amber stood at the railing wrapped in one of his jackets, her silhouette small against the darkness. She didn't turn when he approached, but her shoulders tensed. "You should be resting," he said quietly. "I can't sleep." Her voice was flat. "Every time I close my eyes, I see him, or I see you, or I see everything falling apart because I was stupid enough to come here." "You weren't stupid. You were desperate. There's a difference." "Is there?" She finally turned. In the ambient light, he could see tears tracking down her cheeks. "Edward, I know what you're doing. The surveillance, the investigation, the journalist. I hear Lucas on the phone. I see the way your people move like they're preparing for war. We are preparing—" "Stop." Her voice cracked. "Just stop, please. Stop digging into Patrick's life. Stop building a case. Stop putting yourself and everyone around you at risk for me." "Amber." "He'll retaliate." The words came out desperate. "You don't know him like I do. Patrick doesn't just fight. He destroys. Anyone who threatens him, he burns their entire life down, and he has the resources to do it." Edward reached for her, but she stepped back. "No, you need to hear this. When I first met Patrick, he was perfect. Charming, successful, attentive. After you and I—" She stopped, swallowing hard. "After our divorce, I was so broken, and Patrick made me believe I could have a normal life, a safe life." "When did it start?" 3 months after we got married. Small things at first. He'd criticize how I dressed, said I looked too provocative. I thought he was being protective." She laughed bitterly. "Then he started questioning where I went, who I talked to. He'd check my phone, my emails. Said it was because he loved me." Edward felt his hands clench. This was textbook abuser behavior. Isolation disguised as love. "I stopped seeing my friends. One by one they fell away. Patrick would find reasons why each one was bad for me, and I believed him." She looked at Edward, pain in her eyes. "He controlled everything. What I wore, what I ate, where I went. And when I started to question it, that's when the violence started." "Tell me." "The first time he grabbed my arm, left bruises shaped like his fingers. He apologized immediately, said he was stressed, that he'd never do it again." She pulled up her sleeve, showing fading marks. "But he did, again and again. Grabbing, pushing, slapping. And every time there was an excuse. I'd provoked him. I'd embarrassed him. I'd failed to meet his standards. You tried to report him." "Twice. The first time 6 months ago. I went to the police, filed a complaint. Detective Marcus Warren took notes, said he'd investigate." Her voice hardened. 3 days later, he called to say there wasn't enough evidence. Case closed. "And the second time. I went to the hospital after Patrick pushed me down the stairs. Cracked ribs, bruised kidney. The doctor documented everything. I thought finally someone would help me." "What happened?" "The records were sealed. By court order. Patrick's lawyer filed an emergency motion. The judge approved it same day." Amber wiped at her tears. It was like I didn't exist, like my pain didn't matter. Edward felt that cold rage settle deeper. "Who was the judge?" "Hensley. Margaret Hensley. I found out later she's up for re-election. Guess who her biggest campaign donor is?" "Hale." "Everyone protects him, Edward. The police, the courts, the prosecutors. That's why I stopped trying. So you came to me instead." "I didn't plan to. I just started walking after he hit me, and then I looked up and I was here, like my feet remembered the way home even though my head knew better." Edward moved to stand beside her. This is still your home. It always was. No? My home was with you 5 years ago, before everything fell apart. Before I left you because I couldn't watch you destroy yourself. She turned to face him. Do you remember our last fight? The night I left? Edward remembered. He'd replayed that night 1,000 times. I remember, he said quietly. I begged you to leave that world, to choose me over the violence, and you couldn't. She grabbed his arm. And now, 3 years later, I'm standing here begging you not to go back to it. Not for me. Then what do you want me to do? Let Patrick walk free? I don't know. Her voice broke. I don't have all the answers, but I know that killing him isn't the answer. Edward took her bruised hand gently. 3 years ago, you asked me to choose. Between you and this life. I couldn't give you what you needed then. His voice dropped. But now I'm walking back into it. For you. Because the legitimate world you tried to escape to failed you worse than I ever did. Because sometimes the only way to fight monsters is to become something they fear. That's what I'm afraid of, that you'll become what you're fighting against. Then stop me if I do. Watch me. Hold me accountable. He lifted her hand carefully. But don't ask me to stand by while Patrick Hale walks free. Because I can't do that, Amber. I won't. He pressed his lips to her bruised knuckles, a kiss so gentle it barely qualified as touch. When he looked up, her eyes were closed, tears streaming down. I'm scared, she whispered. I know. What if you can't stop? What if you become the thing I was afraid of? Then you leave again. And this time, I'll let you go without trying to change. He lowered her hand, but didn't release it. But give me a chance first. Let me show you that I can use this power for something good. She opened her eyes, studying his face. How can you be so sure? Because I have something now that I didn't have 5 years ago. What? A reason to stay human. You. He squeezed her hand gently. 5 years ago, I was losing myself because I had nothing to hold on to except power. But now I'm fighting for someone. That's what keeps me grounded. That's what keeps me from becoming the monster you were afraid of. She was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. If you do this, if you really go after Patrick and everyone who protected him, I want to help. Amber, no, listen. Her voice was stronger now. I spent months being a victim, being afraid, being powerless. If you're going to bring him down, I want to be part of it. I want him to know that I'm the reason his perfect life is falling apart. Edward studied her face, seeing the determination beneath the fear. All right. But we do this carefully. I won't put you in danger. I'm already in danger. At least now I'm in danger while fighting back. He pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her carefully. She leaned against him, and for the first time since she'd appeared in the rain, he felt her truly relax. We're going to win this, he said quietly. And when it's over, when you're safe, then we'll figure out what happens next. For us. If there is an us, she murmured. There's always been an us, Amber, even when we were apart. She pulled back to look up at him. Then promise me something. Anything. Promise me you won't lose yourself in this, that you'll stay the man I fell in love with. Edward looked down at her, bruised, broken, but stronger than anyone he'd ever known. I promise. You have my word. She nodded, resting her head against his chest again. They stood there on the terrace as the city breathed below them, two people preparing for a war that would shake Chicago's foundations. Inside, Edward's phone buzzed with updates. The machinery of justice was moving. But for now, Edward just held Amber, reminding himself why he was doing this. Not for power, not for revenge, for her, for justice. Patrick Hale's perfect world was about to end, and Edward Wallace intended to finish it. The war room hummed with energy. Edward's penthouse had transformed over 48 hours into something resembling a military command center. Multiple workstations lined the walls, each manned by specialists. Screens displayed financial records, surveillance feeds, encrypted communications. The air smelled like coffee and electricity. Marcus Chen hunched over 3 keyboards simultaneously. I'm in. Hale's offshore accounts, Cayman Islands, Switzerland, and a shell company in Panama we didn't know about. How much? Edward stood at the center, orchestrating the chaos. 43 million across all accounts, but the assets tied up in properties and investments. Marcus whistled. Close to 200 million in total wealth, most of it dirty. Trace the sources. Already running the algorithms, should have a complete money flow chart within 6 hours. Marcus pulled up a visual web. Boss, this is bigger than we thought. He's got connections to at least 5 major criminal organizations, plus various corrupt officials. Edward studied the web, seeing the full scope of Patrick Hale's empire. Not just a real estate developer, a nexus point where dirty money got cleaned and redistributed. Sophia, where are we on witness statements? Sophia Rodriguez looked up, exhausted but determined. Christine Park gave a full video testimony, detailed account of Hale's abuse, his threats, his connections to police who helped cover it up. Jessica Torres is ready to go on record. 3 more women are considering it. Physical evidence? Park has recordings. Audio of Hale threatening her, saying explicitly that he has police protection. Torres has medical records that were supposedly destroyed. She kept copies. And we have the files from the storage unit. Good. Get it all to Nora Vance. Already done. She's been working around the clock. Edward's phone buzzed. Lucas. Commissioner Davis just left City Hall in a hurry. Looked spooked. My source says someone leaked preliminary financial info to his office. Edward smiled coldly. That would be Marcus's handiwork. A carefully targeted leak designed to show Davis exactly how much they knew. Tony. Status on Hale? Tony Vega appeared, looking grim. Interesting development. Hale's security team has tripled. Sentinel Group brought in reinforcements. 12 operatives now. He's also hired a crisis management firm, Reynolds Associates. So he knows something's coming. He knows enough to be scared. We've intercepted communications between Hale and his lawyer. They're discussing exposure management and damage control. Kruger advised him to prepare for potential indictment. Have they identified us as the source? Not yet. They think it might be a federal investigation. They haven't connected it to you. Tony paused. Yet. Keep it that way as long as possible. Edward moved to the main screen, where a timeline displayed their coordinated attack. All right, listen up. We're 48 hours from go time. Here's how this plays out. The room quieted. Phase 1 begins tonight. Marcus, you'll leak the offshore account information to 3 sources simultaneously. Nora Vance at the Tribune, the federal prosecutor's office, and the IRS. Make it look like it came from different whistleblowers. Easy enough. Phase 2 starts tomorrow morning. Sophia, that's when we release the witness testimonies. Park and Torres go public with their stories. Coordinate with Vance so she can publish their accounts with the financial evidence. The women are ready. Phase 3 is the surveillance footage. The gala incident where Hale struck that server, plus any other footage showing his real personality. That goes live 24 hours after the witness testimonies. We've got 12 separate incidents on tape, Tony said. Verbal abuse, physical intimidation, violence. Good. Release them strategically. Keep the story alive. Edward turned to the final board. Phase 4 is the end game. Once the public story is out, once Hale's allies are scrambling, we approach law enforcement with a complete package, evidence so overwhelming they can't ignore it. What if they still try to bury it? Marcus asked. They won't be able to. By that point, it won't just be our story. It'll be the public's story. The press will be following it. Citizens will be demanding answers. Lucas entered, phone in hand. Boss, we have a problem. Hale's people are sniffing around Amber. We've got surveillance showing his driver doing recon near the building. The room temperature seemed to drop. How close? Edward's voice was deadly calm. Never got past the perimeter. Our security team intercepted, but he's definitely looking. Double the protection detail. I want eyes on every entrance, every exit, every approach vector. Already done. Edward pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. Marcus, access Hale's security system. Find out where his driver is getting his information. You think there's a leak? I think Hale has his own network of informants, and I want to know who's feeding him intelligence. Edward looked around the room. From now on, we operate under the assumption that Hale knows we're coming. That means we move faster than planned. How much faster? Sophia asked. Phase 1 starts in 2 hours. Phase 2 tomorrow at dawn. We collapse the timeline. Boss, that's aggressive. Hale's looking for Amber. That means he's getting desperate. Desperate men do desperate things. Edward's expression was stone. We end this before he has a chance to strike back. 2 hours later, Edward sat alone in his study, watching news feeds on multiple screens. It was 11:47 p.m. when the first story broke. Tribune exclusive. Prominent developers' offshore millions raise questions. Nora Vance's byline. The article was careful, legally precise, but devastating. It detailed the offshore accounts, the shell companies, the unexplained wealth. Edward's phone started buzzing immediately. News alerts, social media reactions. The story was spreading. By midnight, the political establishment was in full panic mode. Mayor Donovan's office released a statement. We are aware of the Tribune report and take any allegations of financial impropriety seriously. Translation: We're distancing ourselves as fast as possible. Commissioner Davis's response was more defensive. Mr. Hale is a respected member of the community. These allegations appear to be part of a coordinated smear campaign. Translation: We're still protecting him. For now. At 1:23 a.m., his phone rang. Unknown number. Yes? Mr. Wallace, this is Commissioner Davis. I believe we need to talk. Edward leaned back. Commissioner, what can I do for you? Don't play games. I know you're behind this. The Tribune story, the leaks, all of it. I'm not trying to drag anyone down, Commissioner. I'm simply ensuring that evidence of criminal activity reaches the appropriate authorities. This is about the woman, Amber Robinson. She came to you. So Hale had made the connection. This is about justice, Edward said calmly. For 7 women who were abused by Patrick Hale while your department looked the other way. You have no proof. I have all the proof, Commissioner. Bank records showing payments from Hale's shell companies to various officers in your department, including Detective Marcus Warren, who bought a new BMW with cash 3 days after closing Amber Robinson's case, including you, with your $200,000 annual security consulting fees. Silence on the line. I'm willing to make a deal, Edward continued. Full cooperation in exchange for immunity. You testify about Hale's corruption, about the payoffs. In exchange, I'll make sure the federal prosecutors know you cooperated. You're offering me immunity? You're not a prosecutor. You're a criminal. I'm someone with evidence that can destroy your career and put you in prison for 20 years. The question is whether you're smart enough to take the deal I'm offering. And if I refuse? Then everything goes public. Every payment, every covered-up complaint. Your career ends either way, Commissioner. The only question is whether it ends with prison time or with you as the whistleblower. Davis was breathing heavily. This is extortion. This is justice. You have 12 hours to decide. Edward ended the call. His phone buzzed. Lucas. Bold move. Think he'll take it? Edward typed back. Self-preservation will win out. Another message, this one from Tony. We have a situation. Amber left the building. Edward's blood ran cold. Edward found the folders waiting on his desk when he returned from retrieving Amber. 2 folders, one thick, one thin. Lucas had left them with a note. Your options. Both work. Choose wisely. The thick folder was labeled legal. The other had no label at all. Edward sat alone in his study, staring at the choice laid out before him. Behind him, the city continued its rhythm, unaware that Patrick Hale's world was crumbling. But Edward's focus was on these two paths, one that would take months, maybe years, one that would take 48 hours. He opened the thick folder first, financial records proving money laundering, witness testimonies from 7 women detailing systematic abuse, surveillance footage showing violence, phone records proving conspiracy, medical documents. It was ironclad. Federal prosecution, probably 25 to 30 years in prison. Asset forfeiture, civil suits, complete legal annihilation. But it would take time. Hale had resources to fight. Appeals, procedural delays, legal maneuvering. And there was always the chance some judge, some prosecutor, some piece of the system was corrupt enough to let him slip through. Edward opened the thin folder. A single sheet with an address, a timeline, and a price. Hale's weekly meeting at the construction site in Pilsen, alone except for his driver, 90 minutes, isolated location. $300,000 to make Patrick Hale disappear permanently. Clean. Final. Guaranteed. What are those? Edward looked up. Amber stood in the doorway, pale, her bruises fading to yellow-green. He could have lied. Could have closed the folders, but he'd promised himself he wouldn't lie to her. Options, he said, for dealing with Patrick. She moved closer, her eyes catching on the single sheet, the address, the clinical description of an assassination. "Oh," she whispered, "I haven't decided." "Haven't you?" She looked at him, something broken in her expression. "Edward, please tell me you're not actually considering this." "I'm considering everything. That's what you do when you're trying to make the right decision." The right decision isn't murder. It's never murder. Even when the alternative is letting a predator walk free? Even when the legal system has proven it won't protect his victims? Yes, even then. She grabbed the single sheet, crumpling it in her fist. Because the moment you kill him, you become him. You become someone who thinks violence is the answer to everything. I've killed before, Amber. You know that. I know. And every time you made that choice, you lost a piece of yourself. Tears streamed down her face. I left you 3 years ago because I could see you disappearing into that darkness, into a world where life became cheap, where violence became normal. Patrick Hale is a problem. He's hurt 7 women. A monster. Yes, I know better than anyone what he is. She moved closer, placing her hands on the desk. But you're not a monster, Edward. You're someone who wants to protect people. And if you kill him, if you cross that line, you're not making things right. You're just becoming another version of what you're fighting against. Edward looked down at the crumpled paper in her hand. The legal approach might fail. He has connections, resources, the best lawyers money can buy. Then we try again. And again. We don't stop fighting just because it's hard. And how many more women get hurt while we're fighting? I don't know. Her voice broke. But I know that killing him doesn't change anything. It doesn't fix the system. It doesn't protect future victims. It just means one less monster in a world full of monsters. Edward stood, moving around the desk to face her. 3 years ago, you asked me if I could walk away from this life, from the violence. I couldn't then. But maybe I can now. Maybe choosing the legal path, trusting the system despite its flaws, is how I prove I'm not the man you were afraid I'd become. Is that what you want? To prove something to me? No. I want to prove something to myself. He took the crumpled paper from her hand, smoothing it out. I want to know that I can face a choice like this and choose the right thing. Even if it's more complicated. Even if there's a chance it won't work. She searched his face. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm not going to kill Patrick Hale. Edward picked up the single sheet and in a deliberate motion tore it in half, then in half again, and again, until it was confetti. I'm not killing him. I'm killing the idea that men like him get away with this. How? By exposing everything, by making his crimes so public, so well documented, that there's no system corrupt enough to hide them. He opened the thick folder, spreading evidence across his desk. We have everything we need. Financial records proving he's a criminal, witness testimonies proving he's an abuser, surveillance footage proving he's violent, phone records proving he's corrupted law enforcement. Patrick has protected himself before because his crimes were hidden, because victims were silenced, because evidence was buried. Edward met her eyes. But we're not hiding anything. We're going directly to the public. Multiple media outlets simultaneously. Federal prosecutors and state attorneys general. Watchdog organizations. We're flooding the zone with so much evidence from so many sources that it becomes impossible to suppress. That's not guaranteed to work. Nothing's guaranteed, but it's the right choice, the moral choice. He took her hands carefully. 3 years ago, you left because you couldn't watch me choose violence over humanity. So now I'm choosing humanity. Even though it's harder, even though it's uncertain, because that's what makes it matter. She stared at him, tears still flowing. You really mean that? I do. I'm done being the monster you were afraid of. Patrick Hale deserves to suffer, but not by my hand. He deserves to suffer by facing consequences, real, legal, public consequences for every crime he's committed. And if he still gets away with it, then at least I'll know I tried to do it the right way, that I trusted justice over vengeance, that I chose to be better than him. Edward released her hands. And maybe that's all any of us can do. Try to be better. Choose the harder path. Trust that eventually, if enough people choose right over easy, the system starts to work. Amber wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her head against his back. Thank you. For what? For being the man I always hoped you'd be. For choosing the difficult path. For proving that love doesn't have to make you a monster. Edward covered her hands with his. Call Lucas. Tell him we're moving forward with the legal option. Everything we have goes public tonight. She pulled back. Tonight? The longer we wait, the more time Hale has to run or retaliate. We end this now. He looked at her. Are you ready? She took a deep breath, then nodded. I'm ready. I've been hiding for too long. Then let's finish this. By nightfall, the city was about to learn the truth. The city burned with revelation. The Broker of Pain. How Patrick Hale Built an Empire on Broken Women. The Tribune's headline dominated every newsstand, every website, every conversation. Nora Vance's exposé had gone viral within hours, spawning follow-up stories from every major outlet, triggering federal investigations, and igniting righteous fury. Edward watched it unfold from his penthouse, surrounded by screens showing the city's response in real time. CNN ran a split screen, Patrick Hale's mugshot beside photos of his victims. 7 women have now come forward with detailed accounts of systematic abuse spanning nearly a decade. Federal prosecutors have confirmed they're reviewing evidence of money laundering, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. On another screen, protesters gathered outside City Hall, holding signs, Justice for Amber, Arrest Commissioner Davis. The system failed us. A third screen showed the footage from the gala on loop, Patrick Hale striking the server, the violence instantaneous and undeniable. Boss. Lucas appeared. Mayor Donovan just announced Commissioner Davis's suspension pending investigation. 3 city council members have resigned, and the FBI raided Hale's offices an hour ago, walked out with boxes of evidence. His allies are running. Faster than rats off a sinking ship. Lucas pulled up financial news. Hale Development Group's stock has been suspended. His board voted to remove him as CEO. His business partners are filing lawsuits. Everyone connected to him is scrambling to distance themselves. Edward watched Patrick Hale's empire disintegrate in real time. Buildings that bore his name were getting new signage. Charities were returning his donations. Politicians were issuing statements claiming they'd had concerns about him for years. The system that had protected him was now devouring him to protect itself. Where's Hale now? Released on bail 2 hours ago. $5 million. Judge ordered him to surrender his passport and submit to electronic monitoring. So he's home. He left his penthouse 40 minutes ago, disabled his ankle monitor, and got in a car with his driver. Edward felt a cold premonition. Does he know where Amber is? Lucas hesitated. We moved her to her sister's apartment in Lincoln Park this morning. She wanted to see her family. I put a security team on her, but if Hale's desperate enough to cut off his ankle monitor, he's desperate enough to do something stupid. Edward was already moving. Where's her sister's apartment? 2847 North Halsted. But boss, my team is already there. I'm going too. Get Tony in 2 cars. Now. Traffic on North Halsted was lighter than usual. Edward sat in the back of the Mercedes while Lucas coordinated with the security team. Status? Edward demanded. Team confirms Amber's inside with her sister. No sign of Hale. Lucas paused. Wait, Tony's got a visual. Black SUV just pulled up. Driver matches Hale's personal security. How far are we? 3 blocks. Faster. The Mercedes skidded around a corner onto Halsted. Edward saw it immediately. The black SUV parked illegally in front of a brownstone, driver's door open, engine running. Edward was out before the car fully stopped. Tony's security team materialized from doorways. He went inside 90 seconds ago, one reported. 3rd floor, we can hear shouting. Edward took the stairs 3 at a time. As he reached the 3rd floor, he heard Patrick Hale's voice, slurred with alcohol and fury. Think you could just destroy me? Everything I built? Amber's voice, quieter but firm. What you did to yourself. I just told the truth. Your truth! Your lies! Edward reached the door, 3B, slightly ajar. Through the gap, he could see Amber near the kitchen, her sister behind her. Patrick Hale was in the center of the living room, swaying slightly, his expensive clothes rumpled, face flushed. He looked nothing like the polished businessman. This was the real Patrick Hale, stripped of pretense. You ruined me, Hale continued, advancing. My company, my reputation, my life, all gone because you couldn't just accept your place. My place? You mean silent and afraid? Covered in bruises? You had everything. I had a prison, and you were the warden. Hale's hand shot out, grabbing a vase. Amber flinched but didn't retreat. Her sister screamed. Edward moved. The door slammed open. Edward stepped inside, his security team flanking him. Patrick Hale spun, the vase still in his hand, his face contorting with recognition. You. The word was pure venom. You did this. No, Edward said calmly. You did this. Every crime you committed, every woman you hurt, that was your choice. I just made sure people found out. You're a criminal. You have no right. I'm not judging you. They are. Edward nodded toward the window. Hale turned. Outside, news vans had gathered. Cameras pointed at the building. Protesters held signs, and pulling up, federal vehicles, unmarked but unmistakable. You called them, Hale said. You set me up. I gave them evidence of your crimes. What they do with it is up to them. Edward's voice was cold, but violating bail conditions, disabling your ankle monitor, and threatening a witness, those are new crimes you committed entirely on your own. Footsteps thundered up the stairs. Federal agents appeared, weapons drawn. Patrick Hale, you're under arrest for violation of bail conditions and witness intimidation. Drop what you're holding and put your hands behind your head. Hale looked around wildly, at Edward, at Amber, at the agents, at the cameras outside. For a moment, Edward thought he might fight. Instead, Hale laughed, a broken, bitter sound. "This is all a setup. You're all in on it. Sir, drop the vase. This is your final warning." Hale hurled the vase at the wall. It shattered, and in that moment, something in him seemed to break as well. His shoulders sagged. "I gave this city everything," he said quietly. "And you're treating me like a criminal because of lies." "Not lies," Amber said, stepping forward. Edward moved to intercept, but she waved him off. She walked toward Hale, no fear in her movements. "Not lies. Truth. Every bruise you gave me. Every time you told me I was worthless. All of it was real." "Amber, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly." She stopped just out of his reach. "You thought you could break me, isolate me, make me believe I was nothing without you. And for a while, it worked." Her voice was clear, strong. "But here's what you didn't count on. You can't break what's already been rebuilt. I'm not the woman you married anymore. I'm someone who survived you, who found the strength to ask for help, who stood up and told the truth." Hale stared at her, incomprehension warring with rage. "I didn't destroy you, Patrick," Amber continued. "You destroyed yourself. Every choice you made, every woman you hurt. Those were your decisions. I just made sure people knew about them." "You bitch!" Hale lunged. Tony intercepted, tackling Hale to the ground. Federal agents swarmed, wrestling him into handcuffs while he screamed and struggled. "It's a setup. Wallace orchestrated this. He's a criminal." "Sir, you have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it." They dragged him toward the door, still struggling. Edward stepped aside, watching as Patrick Hale was perp-walked down the stairs. Outside, camera flashes exploded. News crews surged forward. Protesters cheered. Edward turned to find Amber watching from the window. She looked drained but lighter, as if a weight she'd carried for months had finally been lifted. "You okay?" he asked. "I am now." She looked at him. "He's really going to prison, isn't he?" "Federal charges for money laundering, obstruction of justice, witness intimidation, state charges for assault and conspiracy. Plus, he just violated bail in front of federal agents." Edward moved beside her. "Yes, he's going to prison for a very long time." Below, Patrick Hale was being loaded into a federal vehicle, still shouting. The vehicle pulled away, disappearing into traffic. "He still thinks he can talk his way out of this," Amber said. "Let him think that. Reality will set in soon enough." His phone buzzed with alerts. Breaking. Hale Development Group declares bankruptcy. City Council votes to launch independent investigation into police corruption. Commissioner Davis arrested on federal bribery charges. The dominoes were falling. "It's not just him going down," Lucas said. "It's everyone who enabled him." "Good," Amber said fiercely. "They all deserve it." Edward's phone rang. Nora Vance. "Ms. Vance." "Mr. Wallace, I'm writing a follow-up. Wanted to give you a chance to comment on Hale's claims that you orchestrated this as some kind of personal vendetta." Edward looked at Amber. "You can quote me directly. Patrick Hale spent years hurting women and hiding behind wealth and connections. When someone I care about became his victim, I used my resources to gather evidence and ensure it reached the proper authorities. If that's a vendetta, then I'm guilty. But I prefer to call it justice." He ended the call to find everyone watching him. "You just made yourself the story," Lucas said. "Let them investigate. Even if I face consequences for how we obtained information, it was still worth it. Because Patrick Hale is in federal custody, 7 women have justice, and a corrupt system is being torn apart." Amber moved closer, taking his hand. "You won't go to prison. The FBI needs the win more than they need to prosecute you." They stood together at the window, watching the city adjust to its new reality. Patrick Hale was gone. In his place was the truth. and everyone knew it now. 6 weeks later, the rain returned to Chicago. Not the violent downpour that had brought Amber to Edward's door, but a steady, cleansing rain that washed the city clean. Edward sat in the back of his Mercedes, watching raindrops race down the window. "How's the shelter?" Edward asked. "Good. Hard, but good. Every woman who walks through that door reminds me of myself 6 weeks ago. Terrified, ashamed, convinced she's alone." Amber's voice was soft. "But they're not alone. None of us were. We just needed someone to see us. You're giving them what the system wouldn't. I'm giving them what you gave me, a chance to be believed." Edward stopped walking, turning to face her. Rain fell between them. Is that why you've been avoiding me? Because you feel obligated? What? You haven't returned my calls for 2 weeks. When we see each other for trial updates, you're polite but distant. Edward's voice was gentle but firm. If you need distance from me, just tell me. It's not that. It's complicated. She looked out at the dark lake. 3 years ago, I left you because I was afraid you'd become a monster. Someone who solved problems with violence. She turned back. And then I came back broken, and you used every criminal connection you had to bring down Patrick. You became exactly what I was afraid of. Edward felt something tighten in his chest. I know. But here's the thing. Her voice cracked. You were right to do it. The legal system had failed me. If you hadn't stepped outside official channels, he'd still be out there. So you became what I feared, but you did it for the right reasons, and I don't know how to reconcile that. You think I'm a monster who did good things, or a good man who did monstrous things? I think you're something more complicated. She moved closer. And I think I've been avoiding you because I'm scared. Of me? Of how much I still love you. The words came out raw, honest. After everything. After I left. After I married Patrick. After you exposed yourself to federal investigation to save me. I still love you. Maybe more than before. Edward reached out slowly, cupping her face gently. You don't have to be scared of that. Don't I? Because loving you means accepting that you'll always operate in shadows, that you'll always be dangerous. Yes, I'll always be that man, but I'll also always be the man who chose the harder path when it mattered, who picked justice over vengeance. He brushed rain from her cheek. I'm not perfect, Amber, but I'm trying to be better. And having you in my life? Having someone who holds me accountable, that makes me want to keep trying. She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this. You're stronger than you think. You survived Patrick. You testified against him. You're helping other women survive their own darkness. That's not weakness. That's extraordinary strength. I'm a mess, Edward. I wake up from nightmares. I flinch when someone raises their voice. I'm in therapy 3 times a week. I'm not the woman you fell in love with 5 years ago. Good, he said firmly. Because that woman left me, and I've spent 3 years regretting that I couldn't be what she needed. But this woman, the one who's been through hell and came out fighting, who's helping others because she understands their pain. This woman I could love for the rest of my life. She opened her eyes, searching his face. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't want perfect. I want real. I want you, Amber, exactly as you are. Healing, but not healed. Strong, but not invulnerable. He paused. And I'm willing to wait however long it takes for you to be ready. What if I'm never ready? Then I'll still be here. As your friend, your protector, whatever you need. No pressure, no expectations. He lowered his hands. You don't owe me anything except honest communication about what you need. She stared at him for a long moment, rain falling between them. Then she closed the distance, wrapping her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. Edward held her carefully. You don't owe me gratitude. Just peace. Find peace, Amber. Heal. Become whoever you're meant to be next. They stood like that for a while, 2 people who'd found each other in darkness, holding on against the rain. Eventually, Amber pulled back. I should get back. They're depending on me. Of course. They walked back to the shelter in comfortable silence. At the entrance, Amber paused. Edward? For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. Using evidence instead of violence. It was harder and riskier, but it was right. I had good motivation to choose right. Still, you could have taken the easy path. She smiled sadly. Thank you for being better than that. Thank you for making me want to be. She leaned up, kissing his cheek gently, then disappeared into the shelter. Through the window, Edward watched her return to the young woman with the toddler, being the lifeline someone else desperately needed. Edward turned and started walking, heading back toward the rain-soaked streets. His phone buzzed, Lucas with an update, probably. But Edward ignored it. Tonight wasn't about the organization or the next crisis. Tonight was about closure, about knowing he'd done the right thing, and that it had mattered. He thought about Patrick Hale in federal custody, facing decades in prison, about Commissioner Davis testifying to save himself, about 7 women who finally had justice, about a city slowly purging corruption, about Amber, finding strength in helping others survive what she'd survived. The rain intensified, turning torrential. Thunder rumbled across the lake. Edward pulled his coat tighter and kept walking. He'd destroyed lives to save one, exposed corruption to protect the vulnerable, operated outside the law to ensure justice existed at all. Some would call him a criminal, others a hero. Edward knew he was neither, just a man who'd faced an impossible choice and somehow found a way to choose right. Behind him, the city continued its slow healing. Ahead, more rain, more darkness, more complicated choices. But for now, Edward Wallace allowed himself something he rarely felt: peace. Not happiness, that would come or it wouldn't. Not satisfaction. The work was never done. Just peace. The quiet knowledge that when it mattered most, he'd been better than his worst instincts, that he'd used power to protect instead of dominate. Thunder rolled again, closer now. Lightning illuminated the skyline in stark white flashes. Edward walked through it, rain soaking through his coat, washing away the weight of weeks spent fighting. Some men destroy cities, others save them from the shadows. I did both. Because someone hurt her. Because when Amber Robinson appeared in the rain that night, I had a choice. Let the system fail her again, or step outside it and fight back. I chose to fight. And somehow, impossibly, we won. The city lights blurred through rain and distance. In a few months, most people would forget the details. But Edward would remember. Amber would remember. And the 7 women who finally had justice would remember. That had to be enough. Thunder crashed overhead. Edward looked up, letting rain wash over his face. The storm would pass. Morning would come. Life would continue, complicated and messy and impossible. But tonight, walking through rain-soaked streets in a city slowly learning to be better, Edward Wallace allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, choosing the harder path had been worth it. For Amber, for justice, for the hope that power wielded carefully could still accomplish good. He disappeared into the storm, a shadow among shadows, while behind him the shelter's lights continued to glow warm against the darkness. Some battles were won with violence. Others were won with evidence, with testimony, with 7 women brave enough to speak truth. Edward had chosen the latter, and in choosing, had proven that even men who lived in darkness could still find ways to protect the light. The rain fell harder. Thunder rolled. And Edward Wallace walked on, alone but not lonely, into whatever came next. Because the work was never done. The vulnerable always needed protecting. The corrupt always needed exposing. And somewhere in this city, someone would eventually need help that official channels couldn't provide. When that happened, Edward would be ready. Not as a vigilante, not as a criminal, but as someone who understood that justice and law weren't always the same thing, and who'd proven that choosing the harder path could still bring down empires. The storm raged, the city slept, and Edward disappeared into the rain, a ghost story people would whisper about but never fully understand. The unnamed source who brought down Patrick Hale, the criminal who saved victims, the man who proved that shadows could protect instead of just conceal. It was enough. It had to be enough. Because tomorrow would bring new battles, new choices, new opportunities to be better than his worst instincts. But tonight, walking through rain in a city slowly healing, Edward Wallace had peace. And that, finally, was everything.